Good. Yeah, sounds on, everything. Okay, let's start with this. What is the most important question in software industry? I guess we might disagree on this one, many opinions. So I'm going to make a claim here. The most important question in software industry is, who is the user? What? Why? Do I need to know my users? Know where they live? Well, who is the user is indeed the most important question in software industry. If you look at the relation between the user and a software product, so when you're using a software product at any particular moment, users are doing three things. They are applying their own mental model of reality. Software being software, you can't put reality into the software, you have to describe it. And when users are interacting with the software system, they are describing their own mental model of reality into the system. And that's you are doing yourselves when you're building the system, right? Now, so they are solving business problems through abstraction of reality. Are you able to replicate that mental model of a user when you're building a system? First question. Thing number two is they are exposed to a set of constraints. Constraints you know of and you might not know of. And constraints might cause the user to interact with the system in a very unexpected way. So, when you're building the system, are you able to replicate those constraints? The third one, and the most important one, is that users are always operating within a context. What I mean by the context is they are trying to fulfill very specific needs in any moment in time. So anytime they interact with the system, they have a need, a very specific need, they're trying to achieve at any moment in time. Another moment in time, they have other needs, which means that context changes over time. So the answer to this question, who is the user, that somebody solving a business problem through abstraction of reality, operating on a set of constraints, and somebody with very specific needs. So user is somebody with very specific needs. Why do we keep on building systems that are generic? Why do we keep on building systems that have generic models instead of working towards specific needs? Now, back to the question, why is this the most important question in the software industry? Because this is why the complex systems fail. Because of this gap between the specific needs and the generic models we put into other systems we are building. And then two things happen when this gap exists. Now, the user is suddenly expected to adapt to the system, not the other way around, and we shift the responsibility of fulfilling the specific needs outside the system, somewhere else. If you ever wonder what complexity means, this is it. This gap is where complexity arises. Now, I'm not the only one who claimed that this is the most important question in the software industry. Back in the 70s, in the seminal book, Mythical Man Month, I guess many have heard of, Fred Brooks formulated the same thing. The hardest thing is deciding precisely what to build. Who is the user? What are their specific needs? And this is what domain-driven design brings to the table. And equipping you with a set of tools and mindset to detect these very specific needs and to put you in position to make some practical trade-offs when building system in complex domain. So that is what we do. I work in a small consultancy called Cowork. We do this, we solve very real problems on a daily basis with our clients in complex domains. And I hope you learn something and apply it in your domain as well. And I'll to do that, I'll show you what we usually do in co-work in how to apply domain-driven design in complex domain. I'll use this lovely domain of healthcare. Now, why healthcare is so interesting? Because it's not trivial. It's so far from hello world example as you can get. And the point of talking in conferences, I guess, is for you to have some inspiration to apply it in your work the very next day. So, I'll guide you on a 4-step journey here when dealing with complex domains. We start, how do you learn complex domains? How to decompose the problems to deal with the complexity? How to map it on the code level? And if you're lucky enough, how do you get to the state of modeling breakthrough when you finally understand how the business works and what perhaps the most elegant solution might be. So, please engage. If you have any comments or questions, please go to Menti. I will put an answer it as soon as possible on my blog or on LinkedIn. I appreciate any kinds of comments and engagements. So, I'll share with you a story, as I mentioned, from a domain of healthcare. Now, domain of healthcare is a very vast domain. We can't talk about everything in healthcare, right? We need to choose something very specific. So for this story, we are going to choose a subdomain called group therapy. So let's start with the story. So this subdomain of group therapy is for patients that have identical or similar diagnoses. They are deemed to have best effect on their treatment if their treatment is performed in groups with other patients. Now, in psychiatry, they have been doing this for many years in conversational therapy in groups, but also on somatic side, people can get together and have training sessions together in hospital. And now I'll be using these two terms. I'm not medical, I'm a technical by background, but I'll use two medical terms like psychiatry and somatics. Psychiatry, we are talking about mental health care. Somatic is something that deals with our health care with our physical bodies, right? Psychiatry and somatics. So, and every story has a hero, right? And who are the heroes in software industry? The ones that do actual works, the product teams. And as well as the users operate under a set of constraints, teams also operate under a set of constraints. I was part of this project, part of this team, and I will show you what kind of constraints we had at that time. First one was the business goal constraint. The business goal was replace the legacy system. Huh? That's not the business goal, right? Nothing of business value here, nothing of improved quality of healthcare for patients or medical staff. But I guess that's reality for many of us. Many of us have been in this situation. That is our task, to replace something that works with something else. That was our case. It worked everywhere for everyone. What does that mean? Works for everywhere, everyone. Well, it turns out it was deployed in all the hospitals, everywhere. It was used in all kinds of ways, similar and different. So just by replacing it, you have to bear this burden of it. It needs to be deployed many places and adapted to many ways of working. However, that represents an opportunity. If, as the case often is, you are not the one that actually built the legacy system before, you get the privilege of asking very naive questions. Why are we doing this? What this system does, and why is there in the first place? So you use these questions to get to this insight that complex systems are always failing, regardless. What keeps them afloat is a level of manual procedures and manual routines that users adopt in a daily work to keep the system alive. So they surround the system with all sorts of manual procedures and to make system work. The system itself is always in the failure mode. That's the opportunity for you to provide value that the legacy system does not provide, because you can address this gap of going towards the specific needs. We didn't have much knowledge about the group therapy. We had worked as a team in healthcare, but not the group therapy. So, fortunately, we got a product owner who was knowledgeable about this, and but the first comment was very interesting. We have to expect when we start to explore how this legacy system is functioning in the production environment, it might be used in unexpected ways. It turned out to be very true. Now, we were cross-functional, or were we? That was our team. We have 4 developers, 1 product owner, 1 tester. Is that cross-functional? I don't know. Of course, we missed designer, sorely missed 1 designer. We missed somebody that could help us explain how the system was maintained and operated as of today. But we missed something else as well that I will get back to. Okay, that was the context or the constraints. Let's go back. Let's start with this journey. How do you learn a complex domain? Well, very easy. You listen. You listen. You listen to the stories, you listen to the scenarios. Now, this ability to listen, not many of us actually have this ability. So, for those of you who have developed this ability to listen, you can put it on your resume. This is a very important ability, to be able to listen. What are domain experts that you're actually trying to tell me? So, listening to scenarios is a much better way to deal with complexity than what we call build the business rules. So wait with business rules, listen to stories, then listen to another story, then listen to yet another story, and then you infer the rules, but not start with business rules. And how do you listen? You listen by asking the questions. Who is the user? This most important question. What are their specific needs? You try to understand what they are conveying to you. Now, the pain points itself are usually something you get a hint about. These are the areas where we use most of the time, we struggle most with. That's where you start. And you build a shared understanding. Scenarios, that's another effect of using scenarios, to build a shared understanding in the team, regardless of your role. And you need to find a way to communicate these scenarios. It's easy to say you will use scenarios, but how we are going to use it. Now, I recommend using something visual and something simple. Visual, to have visual artifacts that we can communicate around. Simple means that we require as little as possible from the participants, from the audience. So we can learn the syntax on the fly, no prerequisites. Now, in this project, concrete project, we used this technique called domain storytelling, which was developed in Germany, in German university in the 90s. 2 of the friends of mine in the domain design community, Stefan and Henning, popularized it, published a book about it. And this falls in the category of being simple and very visual. So we set up a workshop, domain storytelling workshop. We gathered the people in the same room from different departments in the same hospital, and us, the product team. And the pain points were these 2 areas. We used most of the time, they told us, on setting up a group, planning a group, or conducting each appointment, check-in process. So group planning and group check-in. So let's start with domain storytelling workshop. So first we turn attention to 1 representative from somatic department. They deal with, for patients that have been affected with lifestyle, with diagnoses that affect their lifestyle, they are offered courses to adapt their lifestyle to be able to deal with this on a daily basis. So the patients and their relatives are offered courses. So we start with a representative from the somatic department. How do you do group therapy? And we draw a domain story, the scenario, as she is trying to describe the process of group planning. So we start with medical secretary receives referral regarding the patient. And now I get the first comment. Because it's visual, she sees what I'm visualizing on the whiteboard, and her comments is this: well, my job title is not medical secretary, it's training consultant. Okay, is that important? I don't know, I make a mark of it. Next step, the medical secretary consults about referral with the supervising physician. I get the same comment again. The real name is medical supervisor of the course. Okay, I'm not sure why it's important, but just to make a note of it. Then we go further. The medical secretary will inform the patient about, and the patient's GP about the course and send a letter to the patients. Now at this point, we understand that, wow, where is the legacy system involved? No legacy system so far. Aren't we supposed to be replacing some system here? Okay, not yet. So, and still no legacy system. Now medical secretary sets up some empty group in a calendar, which is a manual paper-based system. Excuse me. And then, at the end, she actually registers this course folder in a group in a patient record system. So now we see in this case, this patient record system is on the edge of the business process. Now we turn our attention to another representative in the group for adult psychiatry. How do you do group planning? Tell us, and I'll visualize it while you're telling me. So she creates a group for day 1 with the location and patient record system, and group for day 2, meaning we're going to have group meeting every Thursday and every second Monday on 2 different locations. But she's using patient record system immediately. Oh, interesting. Then she adds patient in the group and then adds appointment schedule, meaning that every Thursday we'll meet from 9 to 11, every second Monday we'll meet from 10 to 12. After that's been added, medical secretary will add the medical staff, psychologists, psychiatrists, or nurses for psychiatry departments that participate, but they are on different time slots, while the patients are expected to participate on the complete time slot. So now we have this process. So we have 2 processes for group planning, one for psychiatry, one for somatics. We're going rather deep into the healthcare. Hang on. So what about this check-in process, the other area? How do we go back to the somatic department representative? How do you perform check-in process? Well, patients check in at the venue, and for each appointment, I have to verify who has actually checked in with some manually list, and then the day after, I will actually go and record the patient visit. Now, what the medical secretary records here is attendance. Who was show, who was no show, who has counseled. And then, after this is formally approved, secretary is able to send invoice or fee if you for the no-shows. Great. So this was like a half-a-day workshop. Well, of course, we did more stories, not just these 3. But a half-a-day workshop with domain experts, we go back now. We feel we have learned enough to start working on some model for a solution. Okay. How do you decompose a domain problem, a complex domain problem? I guess there are many ways to do it. One way which I find particularly interesting is using what I call data ownership. Now, each business concept you define as a set of data properties that describe, represent, and the set of data properties represent a model. So now you describe concepts from reality into a model with a set of properties. So we started, okay, how can we decompose the problem? So let's start with the most obvious one. What the users need to do, what they need to perform to be able to do group planning and group therapy. So we do use this approach which we call functional decomposition. So follow the function, tasks, or actions, whatever you call it. You observe the user, what they are doing, and you model it around it. So this is a very classical approach. We see it in many systems. Boundary is a function. So what are the functions in group therapy so far? What the domain storyteller has told us? Well, we need to plan a group, set up a group with patients. We need to conduct each appointment, and we need to send an invoices. Like 3 distinct tasks. Okay? So to be able to do that, we create one model. We use a business concept of group. We create one model, and we describe what properties we need in the group to be able to do all 3 functions. Well, we need quite a lot of them. We need all these. We need every physician and patients and appointments and locations and check-ins. no-show attendance and how to send invoices and so on. And particular interesting is that they comment this comment. Well, we have this property. Whenever we have compulsory intervention psychiatry, we need to refer to a paragraph in law and document that one. Okay, I'll add that one since it's important. Now, domain-driven design teaches us, do not stop at the first model. This could work, and in many systems it does work. So do not stop at the first one. Are there any other ways to model this domain problem? Well, what did domain story show us? There are some users here. There are some roles. Maybe we can decompose along the lines of users' interaction here. So role-based decomposition. Which roles perform different functions? Boundaries, role-based functions. Which users did we have in the domain stories? Well, we had physicians, we had medical secretaries. And now, one tiny step closer to the answer to the question, who is the user? Here it goes. At least two users, two kinds of users. Good. Another incentive here is to split the model. Now we have an incentive to split the model in two. One group for planning, one group for check-in and invoices, because there are different users on those different tasks. So let's use data ownership, and now we get only the properties that are involved in planning on the left-hand side, and properties involved on the appointments, attendance, and invoicing on the right-hand side. Good. We don't know what to do with this interesting property reference to paragraph in law, so we just keep it here. Can we do even better? What did we learn from domain stories? How about the notion of time? Can we model time explicitly? Which roles perform different functions, different moments in time? Now we are edging closer to user context. Okay, so first you plan, and then you conduct each appointment, and then you send invoices along the time axis. Who is the user here? That gets rather interesting. The same user, but in different contexts. So medical secretary as a user can exist in two different contexts. We are edging closer the specific user needs, which gives us incentive to split in three models. Why not? One model for group planning, one for check-in, one for invoicing. If we look at it, then we have now split whatever is regarded important for check-in. We have in a check-in context one model for attendance and another model for billing. We call it billing. We're sending invoices. We still don't know what to do with this awkward property reference to paragraph law, so we just keep it here. So, at this point in time, three different approaches. Very good. One piece of advice. Whatever you do, in whatever system you model, try to move away from functional decomposition. If you have noticed, you really struggle to answer this question, who is the user, using functional decomposition, because all you see in your systems and your models are functions. You don't see users, you don't see their needs. So try to move away from it. And they have this pull towards generic model. That's where generic models usually come from systems that are built around functional decomposition. Try to move away from it if possible. Great. Okay, how can we map this to the code-based structure? Now, first, we realized there was this dilemma where code is very specific about this. That's where actually the real boundaries live, right? Now, users need flexibility, right? However you structure your system, they tend to jump between one part of the system to another, because that's where they need something here and then they need something there. They don't care how you structure your system. As long as they're able to jump from one place to another, they will do that. So these are some kind of examples of end users needing flexibility. However, flexibility comes with a cost. If you're allowing flexibility everywhere, that leads to highly customizable system. And that was what this legacy system was all about. That's what they meant with works for everywhere and everyone. It was one system with one generic model that was able to be configured in a variety of ways. And then we are talking about this responsibility. So this responsibility from generic needs to specific needs was pushed to the configuration. And who is usually dealing with configurations? Well, customers. And that's where the complexity arises. So what we try to do, can we create some boundaries and allow flexibility and configuration within that boundary? Now, what did we do? And that's where the practical trade-offs comes into play. You're not always in position to choose the most nuanced or specific model. Now, we had functional decomposition, we had role-based decomposition, time and role-based decomposition. And we felt, okay, maybe it would be too much for us at the place where we were conceptually to go with the time and role-based decomposition, but we wanted to move away from functional decomposition, so we chose this one, role-based decomposition. This one, right, 2 models of a group. And we got some more motivation talking with our users. Yeah, if you look at the group planning, you're looking ahead in time, what is going to happen. If you're looking group check-in, you're looking what has actually happened. So 2 rather different things. That's another argument to split those models in 2. Okay, so what do you do in code structure? You use whatever boundaries or abstractions are available to you. Namespaces, repositories, I don't know. So in this case, we established 2 namespaces, one for group check-in, one for group planning, and we placed one concept of group as a class in C#, but this is totally irrelevant, whatever language you use, another one in a different namespace. So we allowed ourselves freedom to call 2 distinct business concepts with the same name, but they are within 2 namespaces and delineated by in 2 contexts. And these properties are aligned as according to role-based decomposition. So that's one way to structure the code base, to be explicit about it. And we started to deliver this. It worked. We are on the roll, we are delivering features, users are happy, we feel good about ourselves. But what about this modeling breakthrough? When did that come into the play? Well, modeling breakthrough is at the point where you feel that you finally understand the business, finally understand how they work. However, to get there, a prerequisite to get there is this insight. This funny relationship between the business and the legacy systems is like this. The more complex the legacy system, and the longer the system has been in production, the more likely that the language of the users, the main language, will be affected by the system itself. Which means that when you're communicating with your users, they are not speaking domain language to you. They are speaking the language of the legacy system. And if you are new in this game, as I was at some point, I felt, oh, now I understand the domain language, I understand the business, how it works. Actually, the only thing I understood was how the terminology of the legacy system developed 20 years ago. So this is really important to understand that you need to peel away the layers of the legacy system. You need to distill the domain. And that's not always an easy task. But just as if you're aware of it, then you're in a good position to start. And how you do that? Well, you can use these visual techniques of building scenarios like domain storytelling, but you need to allow yourself to interrupt your users and ask them some questions along the way. Why are you doing this? What are you trying to achieve? Can you stop a little bit, explain? How would you do it without software? That could be a good question. So you need to guide your users to look behind whatever legacy system is demasking. So with that insight in mind, we got to this modeling breakthrough. And there were some hints along the way, but guess what? We were not listening. Now, first hint came very early on. We called our users medical secretary while we were told that this job title is training consultant. The other one we called supervising physician while the actual title is medical supervisor of the course. We were told, we didn't listen, or we made a note of it here but didn't apply it in our code, in our models. That was one hint. Another one came here. The difference, the sheer difference between two business processes, between two departments, somatic and psychiatry, the same thing. They are trying to plan a group, here and here. Very different, right? It was very obvious to you. When you look at them, they are very different. That was another hint. The third hint was the most shocking one. We were on our way to meet our users in their hospital. You know, when you go into a large hospital, there's a big sign in the entrance where all the departments are on the first floor, second floor, third floor. Looks like this. And we were looking at by chance, trying to figure out where we are going to meet, which floor we are going to take. And one of us asked, where is group therapy? Huh? Don't they do group therapy here? Of course they do, we are talking about them. And then this slow realization comes. The purpose of the hospital is not to provide group therapy, is to provide treatment for whatever health issues patients might have. And they do this by organizing themselves into the discipline in the field of medicine. Neurology, psychiatry, rheumatology, and so on and so on. So this is how hospitals view, that's their perspectives on their business. Our perspective was group planning and group check-in. And of course, if you go ask the domain experts, wow, psychiatry is different from neurology. Well, welcome, Sherlock. Of course they are. I could have told you a long time ago. Or even I have told you, you were not listening. Which means you can decompose along the lines of business capabilities. So what are the capabilities of the hospital? Providing correct treatment for the health issue you have. And now, for the first time in this model, we have something that we have moved away from the function as a boundary. The real boundary is business capability, which opens up for all sorts of very interesting product modeling discussions. Starts to be a little bit uncomfortable for a couple of developers. So, how can we model this one? Well, we establish a very hard boundary between somatics and psychiatry. And now, we are getting really close to this question, who is the user? Now we can call the user, but what they really do, what their field of specialization is. We can call on psychiatry side our users psychologists and psychiatrists, what they really are, not generalizing using the term like physician and so on. And opens up another perspective. You can really go very specific in modeling your systems. You can employ time and role-based decomposition within the boundary of business capabilities and end up with many models. If that is practical and if it's used. But it's possible. And this way, you get very close to those specific user needs. Going back to our data ownership, which provides feedback to us, yes, we can call our users what they are really called, psychologists and psychiatrists. We can use this term, medical supervisor of the course, training consultant, and we allow ourselves to duplicate some of the properties. We can call diagnosis on somatic side, and we can have diagnosis on psychiatry side. Of course, they all diagnose their patients, but their diagnoses are different because the discipline of field of medicine is different. And finally, we know where to put this awkward property reference to paragraph in law for what? Psychiatry interventions. Well, it belongs in psychiatry, not in somatic. Very obvious. Great. So what we were actually missing in our cross-functional team, apart from things we knew we were missing, what we didn't know, we were missing a field specialist. Because our product owner, who was very knowledgeable, after years of working with legacy system, he was turned from specialist into a generalist. So his ability to recognize the specific user needs was diminished over time. Legacy systems have tendency to do that for you. Okay, great moment in time. Or was it? Did we do anything about this? Now we really realized this is how it works. This is how we can do. This is the real model. No, we did nothing. Why? Well, we were in production, we were rolling, users were happy, the features were going, the system is being replaced, everybody's happy, except a couple of us who realized we could have done things differently. Because at some point in time, you become committed to the choices you make. And that is difficult to go back and rewrite. On top of it, there are some really interesting product discussions here. What is the cost of developing separate products for separate user groups versus the cost that legacy system imposed of having this highly customizable configuration layer? Now, what are you going to do product-wise? And what is market going to tell us? What are incentives we get? The users are very happy to get very specialized products because tailored to their specific needs. Well, market will award you to have one thing that you can sell to many, right? So where are you going to be? There are these opposing forces. You need to find your place. And that's where strategy comes into play. So this modeling breakthrough, however awkward they might feel, they are very good for fueling the strategy. So, okay, I want to be somewhere between very generic and very specific. Do I need a big rewrite? No, please do not do big rewrites. I've done a couple of those. But the strategy I use, it works, is that first you set a target. We want to be here. That is how we want our model of the system to look like. But we are not there. But we recognize the small opportunities that present themselves along the way. And for each opportunity, you steer your product towards that direction, one step at a time. Of course, it requires discipline. It requires a persistence. Do not give up. But that's the way to deal without doing big rewrites. One opportunity at a time. Okay, let's wrap it up. Is domain design something for you? I hope so. For developers, you can structure the code base with using the business concepts. You can naming things using the context. Names always exist within the context. Boundaries for architects. Listen to field specialists. Do not stop at the first model and use data ownership as a feedback to find your boundaries. What about designers? Maybe we as developers can allow designers to be more active in inner system workings and be very mindful of this gap of diluted language after a long time being used legacy system. Testers might benefit from data-driven design to even be better in capturing the user context and setting a specific test setup in real life. And all those product and technology leadership issues, well, cross-functional, what it really means, and modeling breakthrough, it's fueling your strategy. How do you fulfill those specific needs with specific products? Where do you want to be on this scale from generic to specific? Okay, we are supposed to be finished, and we are. So domain-driven design is all about optionality. It gives you options. You can choose the right model for your context. Of course, be aware that modeling insights might come at very inconvenient times. And if there is one thing to remember, this Mufrid's heuristic for building system in complex domains, start with what is different, not what is common. So turn things around. So that's it. This is just a small talk, just a short one. Please do engage. I'd love to discuss more. Thank you.